Welcome to 3D Builds. I'm Patrick McConville, and today we will be baking and building a Greek temple using a recipe for olive oil cracker. It's a really simple cracker, but with this design makes a huge impact on your charcuterie or appetizer table. And it's perfect for any Mediterranean dinner party. When you're ready to begin baking your walls, grab your ingredients and your waterproof blueprints and join me back here in the kitchen. To make the dough for your temple walls, you'll need a few simple ingredients. First, I've whisked together all-purpose flour and salt, olive oil, and then room temperature water. And you can add all of those to the bowl of a stand mixer, or you can mix them with a wooden spoon in a regular bowl. You will probably need either way to knead a little bit at the end in order to make sure everything's well incorporated. And then we will split it into 4 even balls. When you're ready to cut out the pieces for your Greek temple, grab your dough balls, a rolling pin, and in this case, I have fitted my rolling pin with 1/8 inch rolling pin bands. If you don't have these, that's fine, but just make sure that you try to achieve that 1/8 inch thickness of your dough before you cut out the pieces. Then, of course, I have my 3D Builds Greek temple construction set, some all-purpose flour for dusting my surfaces, and a few clay tools that I'll use to pry any cutouts from the window and door openings. To begin, grab your parchment paper, and you'll want to line maybe about 3 or 4 sheets, and preheat your oven to 400 degrees. You can then go ahead and begin rolling out your dough one ball at a time and cutting out each of your pieces. For this design, you'll need 1 each of every piece, with the exception of the side walls, which you'll need 2 of, and the roof, which you'll also need 2 of. And then you can cut out as many as you like of these columns, and then these can be an accessory cracker that you can put out on your charcuterie board. People can snack on them, and it kind of gives the effect of looking like ancient ruins. It also enables people to have a snack without immediately destroying the structure, so you can preserve it and it can look nice for as long as possible before it gets demolished. The good news is that once it's broken up and eaten, it looks like ancient ruins, so it's actually got a bit of character there as well. The trick to this dough is not to work your dough too hard because it'll begin to pull back together and it's really hard to spread out. So you really want to try to roll it out thin and then cut out your pieces on the first try. If you do have any mishaps, it's not really that big of a deal because the dough is so easy to make that you can just always make another batch. But once you have your pieces cut out, I like to finish them off with a bit of finishing salt. When you're ready to put your pieces in the oven, put them into that 400-degree preheated oven for 10 to 12 minutes, but monitor them because you don't want them to get too dark. Once they're finished baking, remove them from the oven and cool them in the pans for 10 minutes, and then transfer them to a cooling rack for another 15. While you wait for your pieces to cool, you can make your royal icing mortar. In this case, we'll be making a savory mortar using cream cheese powder and garlic. You want to first whisk together your dry ingredients, which will be confectioner sugar, cream cheese powder, and garlic, as well as a little bit of cream of tartar. And then you'll also want to have on hand a little bit of extra confectioner sugar, about 10 to 15 tablespoons worth, because we'll be adding that at the end. And then your room temperature egg whites. To begin, add your egg whites to the bowl of a stand mixer or to a regular bowl if you're using a hand mixer, and then beat those on high until they're frothy, approximately 1 minute. Once those are nice and foamy, you can begin adding your dry mixture in roughly half-cup increments, and you'll want to beat well after each addition. And then once everything's been added, switch to high and beat that on high for approximately 3 to 5 minutes or until the mixture begins to come together. At that point, you'll want to begin adding about 1 tablespoon or 2 tablespoons at a time, some additional powdered sugar until you achieve a consistency that will squeeze through a piping bag, but will also hold the house together. So something typical of a traditional royal icing consistency. After a few minutes, check your consistency, and the cream cheese powder will keep it looser than a traditional royal icing, even once it's been beating for about 3 to 5 minutes. And at that point, you can begin adding additional powdered sugar. So you want to add that in about 1 to 2 tablespoons at a time, and then keep checking your consistency because you don't want it to be so thick that you won't be able to squeeze it through a piping bag, but you want to make sure it's not too loose where it will keep your house from staying together. At this point, I've added about 10 tablespoons of additional confectioner's sugar, and I have something that is similar to the consistency of a royal icing. So I'll go ahead and transfer that to a pastry bag. And if you don't have a pastry bag, you can always use a Ziploc bag with the corner cut out, and then we will be ready to begin our construction. If you prefer not to make this royal icing, it is a cream cheese royal icing, but it is on the sweet side. You can always use a Boursin cheese or some other soft or melted cheese in order to put the house together. I prefer this because you can make it a few hours ahead or even a day ahead, and it will remain nice and fresh so that when your guests eat it, it's a pleasant experience. If you're going to use something like a Boursin cheese or any other real cheese product, you would want to use that right before you serve it. So you'd want to assemble the house and then serve it right away. When you're ready to build, grab your cooled pieces as well as whatever surface you'll be building on. In this case, I have a small cake stand that I found at a local craft store. You will also need your mortar and your blueprints, which have on the back your build plan. The mortar that I'm using, again, is a royal icing with cream cheese powder and garlic powder in it. So it's a bit savory, also sweet. And I like this option because it's very stable. So if you make your house a day or so beforehand, and then you serve it to your guests, it'll harden, but it'll stay nice and fresh and tasty. Whereas if you were to use a cheese product like a Boursin cheese or some kind of a soft cheese, that you would want to only put together once you serve it to your guests, so right away. When you're ready to begin building, you can begin with your back wall. So find your piece that looks like this, and we will add a line of icing to the bottom edge. And I'm just going to take a temporary support here, and you can take your back wall and press it down against your build surface wherever you would like to place your back wall. And take your temporary support, and you can lean that wall up against it. You can then take one of your side walls and then just dry fit it in place and determine which edge will meet that back wall. And we'll put a line of icing on that edge as well as along the bottom edge. And then you can take your side wall and press that down against your build surface, and then press your back wall against the edge of that side wall so that it meets that line of icing. And then just pinch everything together so that you get a nice clean squared corner, and you can remove your support. So we have our first two walls placed. Next, take your other side wall and then repeat that process. So dry fit it, determine which edge will get a line of icing, as well as that bottom edge. and then apply your icing mortar. And then press that down into place, first against your work surface, and then against your back wall. Next, we will take this piece, which will sit at the front of the structure, right behind your front facade. So you can take that piece, brush off any excess salt, and then you will want to first add a line of icing to the front edge of both side walls, and then to the bottom edge of that piece. And then take that piece and press it down against your work surface at the front of your structure, and then join the front edges of your side walls with that piece. So you want to make sure that you have a nice squared structure and pinch all of the corners together so that you get a nice clean base structure for your temple. Now you've probably noticed these crackers, this recipe puffs up a bit when you bake it. And so the pieces are not perfect. In fact, if you look at one of my roof pieces, it's a little bit disfigured. That's perfectly okay. And in fact, it really adds to the charm of the structure when you're all done. So if you like, you can give that a moment to set up. And then when you're ready, you can take your front facade, and we will be placing that next. Before we do, I am just going to add a few dots of icing to the back of the front facade as well as along that bottom edge. So along that bottom edge, and then I will just dry fit that, press it down against the surface, and then pull it back just so that I can add a dot of icing to the very top tip on the back side and pinch that together with that piece that sits behind the front facade. And that will really anchor that piece. And if you like, you can add a bit of additional icing behind, but that one dot and the bottom should really hold that in place. Next, we will place our first roof piece. So along one side, you want to draw a line of icing or mortar across each of those top edges on one side. And then take your roof piece. So you can select either roof piece. In this case, I will do the larger one just so that it'll give some support to the one that didn't come out perfectly. And then place that over those 3 lines of icing and press it down into place. And you want to make sure that it doesn't protrude beyond the peak on either of those pieces because you don't want it to interfere with the placement of your final roof piece. You can then add a line of icing to the top 3 edges on the other side and along that center roof line. And then take your second roof piece and press that down into place. And you now have a completed, if not perfect, Greek temple, but certainly something that will liven up your charcuterie display or any appetizer buffet that you might put out. You do additionally have all of these additional columns. The recipe will make many more of these, but I just made a few for demonstrative purposes. And you can use those to decorate the scene, decorate your charcuterie board. I'm going to go ahead and clean up, and when I come back, we will light up our structure from within. As a final step, once you've completed your structure, I always like to add a battery-operated tea light because it really brings your food display to life and creates a bit of whimsy for your guests. If you'd like to build your own Greek temple, you can find this construction set and all of our other sets on 3DBYLDZ.com. That's 3DBYLDZ.com. And if you do build one, please tag us on social media using @3DBuilds or hashtag 3DBuilds. And again, that's 3DBYLDZ. In addition to this olive oil cracker recipe, we have a ton of other savory and sweet cookie recipes. And you can also use these kits to create craft constructions out of clay and other materials as well. So please join us for the next installment, and I hope you enjoyed this. I cannot wait to see what you build.